a critique of capitalism. It's not an adequate replacement for capitalism. Capitalism has obviously won and is, in a sense, the evolution of economics. So capitalism is definitely there to stay. Although there are other books talking about the Chinese system, because they're trying to merge a capitalist system with a communist system. It's a state-directed capitalism. Interesting, right? So the state is the end of history, the embodiment of reason. I should also mention I think I've talked about Francis. And the book that made him famous, really, to begin with, when he was younger, was The End of History and the Last Man. And it's hilarious how all sorts of folks say, history hasn't ended. It's still going on. There's also books about the end of education, as if education is ending. No, it's end in that sense means the goal of history. And remember, for Hegel, the goal of history is this constant increase in freedom, in a sense, towards chaos, right? And what he talks about, really, in this book, was when the Soviet Union collapsed. The Soviet Union came to realize that they needed to become capitalistic in order to be competitive, and so the communist system collapsed. And he predicts that within so many years, every country in the world will be a capitalistic, democratic republic. And so that seems to be the goal of history, or the end of history. And The Last Man, kind of an interesting aside, is what are we going to be like in that kind of world? Okay, so the mind of God, I'll end with this last one here, is actual only via the minds of his creations, which serve as its vehicle. It is as bearers of this developing self-consciousness of God that those finally embodied inhabitants of the universe, ourselves, can be such finite infinites. Oh, I actually want to go. Let me find okay. Pretty sure I have Mill as the next person we're doing, right? John Stuart Mill. I think we do Kierkegaard on Monday. In any case, they're both obviously influenced by the Hegelian philosophy. It was the Central European philosophy of the day. By the time Hegel died, everybody in Germany, at least, were Hegelians. Of course, almost immediately, Hegel's philosophy split to two sides. So you had the regular Hegelians, but then you had the young Hegelians. And the young Hegelians are going to include Marx and Feuerbach and others. But so, what was the impact in England? They're definitely influenced by it. You could see it's not just Hegel, of course, that there's this whole movement associated with the various individuals that Hegel's part of, right? Goethe is definitely into this. There's a whole bunch of folks. If you look at the book, Glorious Rebels. Am I remembering the name of it right? Magnificent Rebels, sorry. Andrea Wolf talks about the group of friends and relationships, including Goethe and Caroline, all kinds of interesting characters. Caroline marries 3 of the different philosophers, including Schelling, before she died. So it was very interesting seeing it from a feminine point of view of what kinds of things went on. But so it was very popular and clearly influenced England. I mentioned that Charles Darwin's let me put up John Stuart. I always have trouble with S-T, let's try this, S-T-U-A-R-T, Mill. Ha. So John Stuart Mill. And notice 1806 to 1873. So let's take a look at Charles Darwin. Notice that he's significantly uglier, but notice that he's 1809 to 1882. But Origin of the Species is one book that I keep in my mind, because On Liberty by John Stuart Mill, published both in 1859, which is the year before our Civil War begins. So it gives you an interesting connection on the timeline, how they are. And here he's on the Beagle, which was the name of the small ship, etc. By the way, I highly recommend reading Wikipedia articles on all these folks. I don't know what you have been reading as far as your kind of reading on the course, but the Wikipedia articles, I think, are excellent, give you an overall view of these different individuals. The Descent of Man is kind of fun, because that sounds like we're going downhill instead of up. It's kind of an interesting. There's also a bar downtown on, is it 4th Street, that has the iconic apes, eventually getting to the point where they're walking bipedally.
Called Darwin's Theory.
Darwin's Theory is the name of the bar. I don't recall ever being in there, but I really should at least visit once, just to see. I think it's just a restaurant, isn't it? Or is it a bar?
It's
bar
a bar.
restaurant?
It's a late bar.
However,
Sad bar.
and by the way, evolutionary theory has evolved. And there's of course lots of things going on, but I would say that one of the best books on it, nice little book that explains a lot, is I'll think of it, but not right now. The structure of evolution. Where's the evolutionary theory? Something like that. There we go. It gets its own page. Right? Whenever I say a small book, I'm always joking. You know that, right? This is like well over 1,000 pages. But as you read through it, you discover that even before Darwin, there were folks working on evolutionary theory. And as you get, of course, deeply into all of the different individuals trying to figure out how all this might change, how change works in biological creatures and so on, you end up with a whole heck of a lot of development in evolutionary theory. So the structure of evolutionary theory keeps changing itself, and you end up really not with any doubt that change happens this way. We've got too much evidence for it. There's still, of course, the question of how, and especially with DNA and the understanding of genes and things of that sort, none of which Charles Darwin knew about. That was way before he. But this phrase, punctuated equilibrium, is the main point of the book, and that's the idea that evolution seems to come in spurts. That there's something that happens that wipes out the dinosaurs, and then all of a sudden mammals rule the earth, and then something else happens, and you end up with, a whole bunch of change all at once. And if anything, at the moment, even though it's not part of the book, what we're seeing is an extinction event. So we're seeing a lot of animals that are dying off because of the success of human beings in transforming the environment to look like this. Streets, paved over streets, fences, and that's, all that stuff. All right, so John Stuart Mill is a contemporary, and I think I mentioned that one of the main insights into what is going on with John Stuart Mill is the idea that ethics evolves. The main philosophy associated with John Stuart Mill is utilitarianism. Utilitarianism. And the principle of utility is that the greatest good for the greatest number should be the goal of all of our decisions. The greatest good for the greatest number. That's the only thing that's clear about utility. Because once you say, okay, well, we want the greatest good, what the heck is that? What do you mean by the greatest good? It's nice to say, oh, we want the greatest good for the greatest number. And the so-called founder of that is Jeremy Bentham. And I think I mentioned him and pointed out that his body is still attending the committee meetings, for the College of London, etc. But basically, his philosophical insight is that everything is based on happiness. We all want to be happy. That even a paramecium is trying to be happy. What direction should it go, left or right? I don't know if he talks about paramecia or parameciums, what the plural of paramecium is. But in any case, he comes up with what he calls the this is age-related problems with me not remembering the word for focusing on your hedon. There you go. A hedonist, right? So a hedonist is someone that's focused totally on their own happiness, basically. But a hedon, a single hedon, is a measurable element of happiness. I don't know how you measure those, but theoretically he came up with the idea that when you're trying to make a decision, what you have to do is take kind of a mathematical calculation. If we do this, that will increase happiness by 50 hedons. And if we do this, that will increase happiness by 100 hedons. So we ought to do this, the 100 hedons. I think of it, whenever I go to the state fair in the summer. It's such a beautiful day. It would be a day to sit out on the back deck and read Hegel. And I would get 20 hedons of happiness out of sitting there on the back deck reading Hegel. But all the kids, and I'm imagining them as still young kids, not, now they go to the fair on their own, don't invite me and so on. But the idea of taking the kids, each of the kids would get at least 10 hedons of happiness, you know, their quality of happiness is not on a par with mine, obviously. Sorry, that's kind of egocentric. But you know, but each of them would enjoy the visit to the state fair by 10 heathens. Plus, my wife would love going because she loves to see the quilt show. That's her fun thing. She goes to the quilt show and sits there, enjoys the quilt show. And I do like some aspects of the fair. I like going to the animals, see all the the farm animals, the farm display. I love the smell of that derriere. That's a terrible joke. I don't know if any of you caught it. However, that's actually from a computer game. In any case, you have to measure. Well, okay, so I